Listen closely. This may be the moment your heart finally exhales. If someone walked away from you, not because you lacked love, but because they feared it, this message is for you. Right now, you may think silence is weakness, but silence is where power grows. Time is not your enemy. Time is about to do what you never could. Let me speak truth into the places where you've been doubting yourself. When someone avoids intimacy, they are not strong. They are protected, protected by distance, protected by control, protected by running. And as long as you stay present, available, and waiting, they never have to feel the weight of what they lost. But the moment you step back, something sacred begins to happen. You see, love that is avoided does not disappear. It waits, it settles, it lingers. And time slowly removes the anesthesia they used to survive without feeling. Distraction fades, noise quiets. And then, in stillness, the ache arrives. Not because you wanted revenge, but because truth cannot be outrun forever. This is divine order at work. You were never meant to convince someone to choose you. You were meant to align with your worth and let absence teach the lesson your words never could. When you stop reaching, when you stop explaining, when you stop trying to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you, the balance shifts. At first, they feel relief, freedom, control, but time is patient. And slowly, what once felt like relief turns into restlessness. Memories surface, your consistency echoes. Your warmth becomes noticeable by its absence, and the very space they demanded becomes the place they feel the most exposed. Understand this. Your silence is not abandonment, it is self-honor. And when you choose peace over pursuit, you are not losing them. You are returning to yourself. That is when time begins its work. Avoidance survives on immediacy. Healing grows in delay. The longer they go without you, the more the emotional debt comes due. Not because you are unforgettable, but because real connection leaves an imprint on the soul. And souls remember, do not rush this process. Do not interrupt divine timing by going back to what broke you. What is meant to awaken will awaken in its own season. And whether they return transformed or remain distant no longer matters, because by then, you will have outgrown the need to be chosen by someone who could not meet you where you stood. Let time do what force never can. Let silence speak. Let absence teach. And trust this. When you stop trying to be enough for someone else, you finally become whole for yourself. Distance reveals truth more clearly than confrontation ever can, because truth does not argue, it unfolds. When emotions are raw and attachment is active, confrontation feels powerful. Words are exchanged, explanations are demanded, emotions spill out, and yet nothing truly changes. That is because confrontation speaks to the surface mind, while distance speaks to the subconscious. Die. Stance removes the noise, the defense mechanisms, the rehearsed responses. It takes away the stage where avoidance performs best. When you are present, available, and emotionally accessible, an avoidant person can remain numb. Your presence cushions them from consequences. They can lean on your emotional labor without fully engaging their own. Distance removes that comfort. It strips away the buffer. And in that space, truth begins to rise not all at once, but slowly, honestly, and without negotiation. Distance reveals who someone is when they are no longer reacting to you, but sitting with themselves. In confrontation, people defend identities. In distance, identities unravel. There is no one to blame, no one to push against, no one to distract them from their inner landscape. The mind, when no longer stimulated by conflict or reassurance, starts replaying what was avoided. That replay is not intentional, it is neurological. The brain seeks completion. It returns to unresolved emotion, albons again and again. What you must understand is that confrontation often feeds avoidance. It gives them intensity without vulnerability. It allows them to feel powerful, justified, or overwhelmed anything but emotionally accountable. Distance removes those escapes. It does not accuse. It does not plead. It simply exists. And existence without you forces a comparison they can no longer control. Distance also reveals your truth to you. While confrontation keeps you entangled, distance brings clarity. You begin to see patterns instead of promises. You notice how often you were explaining yourself, softening your needs, shrinking your expectations. Distance creates space for discernment. You stop asking why they are the way they are and start noticing how it made you feel. That shift is not small, it is sacred. Truth is uncomfortable when it arrives without distraction. In silence, the avoidant begins to feel what they postponed. Not immediately at first, there is relief. But relief is temporary. It fades when novelty fades. And when the emotional noise quiets, what remains is absence. That absence becomes a mirror. And mirrors do not lie. Distance reveals whether love was genuine or merely convenient. If the bond was real, it will surface as grief, longing, and reflection. If it was convenience, it will dissolve quickly. Either way, distance delivers truth without bias. It does not negotiate outcomes. It simply exposes reality. You were never meant to fight for clarity. Clarity arrives when you stop fighting. Distance is not punishment, it is alignment. It allows divine order to restore balance. What is false cannot survive silence. What is real will eventually seek resolution. When you choose distance, you step out of emotional chaos and into wisdom. You stop forcing answers and allow truth to present itself. And when truth arrives on its own, it is undeniable. It does not need convincing. It does not need validation. It simply is. That is why distance is more awful than confrontation. Because truth does not need volume, it needs space. Time removes emotional numbing and awakens buried attachment wounds in a way nothing else can. When someone avoids closeness, they are not emotionless, they are overwhelmed. Emotional numbing becomes a survival strategy, a way to keep old pain from resurfacing. They stay busy, distracted, detached, convincing themselves that distance equals strength. But time is relentless in its honesty. It slowly dismantles the walls built to keep feeling at bay. In the beginning, time feels like relief to the avoidant. The absence of emotional demands creates a sense of calm. No expectations, no vulnerability, no pressure to show up fully. They mistake this calm for healing. But it is not healing, it is suspension. Emotions do not disappear just because they are ignored. They wait. And time, patient and precise, brings them back into awareness when the distractions lose their power. As days pass and the nervous system the numbing begins to crack. Without constant stimulation, the mind starts revisiting what was left unfinished. Memories surface uninvited. Emotional moments replay without the emotional armor that once kept them at a distance. This is when buried attachment wounds begin to stir. Not because they want to feel, but because unresolved pain always seeks resolution. Time exposes the difference between avoidance and freedom. True freedom brings peace. Avoidance brings restlessness. And restlessness grows louder in silence. The body remembers what the mind tried to forget. Attachment wounds are stored in the nervous system, not in logic. That is why no amount of reasoning can erase them. Only time, combined with stillness, allows them to rise to the surface. As numbing fades, discomfort increases. They begin to feel the weight of what they postponed: connection, loss, intimacy, regret. This is not punishment, it is consequence. Emotional debt always comes due, and the longer it is, wide, the more intense the awakening becomes. Time does not rush this process because awakening requires readiness. It arrives when the mind can no longer outrun the body's truth. What often emerges is not immediate longing, but confusion. The avoidant may feel unsettled, irritable, or emotionally heavy without understanding why. This is the nervous system recalibrating. The protective detachment that once felt safe now feels empty. And in that emptiness, the attachment wound reveals itself. Fear of dependence, fear of abandonment, fear of being seen. These fears were never resolved, they were only avoided. Time also removes the illusion of control. Avoidance relies on managing closeness, deciding when to engage and when to withdraw. But with time, control fades. There is no one to regulate against, no one to push away or pull close. The inner child, long ignored, begins to speak. And it speaks in longing, sadness, and grief. This is the sacred role of time. It softens resistance. It kens denial. It invites truth without force. While confrontation triggers defense, time dissolves it. And once the defenses fall, the wound is no longer buried. It is felt, fully, honestly. And when attachment wounds awaken, something profound happens. Choice becomes possible. Not the impulsive choice driven by fear, but the conscious choice driven by awareness. Time does not guarantee reunion. It guarantees revelation. And revelation is the beginning of real healing, whether that healing happens together or apart. That is why time is so powerful. It does not demand growth. It allows it. Silence forces avoidance to face what distraction once protected them from. Avoidance thrives on noise, constant movement, stimulation, and emotional detours that keep the deeper self untouched. As long as there is something to respond to, react against, or escape into, the inner world remains safely buried. Silence removes all exits at once. It leaves no one to manage, no emotions to deflect, no external focus to hide behind. What remains is the self, undiluted and unavoidable. At first, silence feels empowering to the avoidant. They interpret it as control, as independence, as proof they do not need anyone. They fill the quiet with productivity, entertainment, or new connections, believing they have moved on. But silence is not the absence of sound, it is the absence of avoidance. And over time, distraction loses its effectiveness. What once felt like freedom begins to feel hollow. Silence has a way of amplifying the internal world. Without someone else's emotions to regulate against, the nervous system turns inward. Thoughts become louder. Feelings become harder to suppress. The mind begins replaying moments that were never fully processed. Conversations resurface. Emotional cues once ignored now demand attention. Silence does not accuse, but it remembers. This is where discomfort begins. Not dramatic pain, but a low, persistent ache. A sense that something important was left solved. Avoidants often mistake this discomfort for boredom or restlessness, but it is neither. It is emotional truth rising to consciousness. Silence removes the external pressure, but increases internal awareness. And awareness is what avoidance fears most. Distraction once served as armor. It allowed the avoidant to feel in control while remaining emotionally untouched. Silence strips that armor away. There is no one to blame, no situation to manage, no narrative to defend. In the quiet, the self becomes visible, and visibility awakens vulnerability. What surfaces in silence is not always longing at first. Often it is resistance, irritation, a desire to escape again. This is the psyche's last attempt to protect old wounds, but silence persists. And as it does, deeper emotions emerge: grief over lost connection, fear of intimacy, regret over emotional distance. These feelings were never gone, they were simply delayed. Silence also reveals the cost of avoidance. In the absence of stimul, Ashen, the avoidant becomes aware of emotional emptiness. The absence of connection becomes tangible. The warmth once provided by another's presence is now noticeably missing. Silence turns absence into experience. An experience cannot be rationalized away. This process is deeply uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of self-sufficiency. Avoidants often build identity around not needing anyone. Silence challenges that identity. It asks, quietly but persistently, what was truly avoided. And the answer is rarely the relationship itself. It is the vulnerability the relationship required. In silence, the inner child often emerges. Old fears surface: fear of being engulfed, fear of being abandoned, fear of being inadequate. These fears were once managed through distance. Now, distance has brought them into the open. Silence does not create these fears, it reveals them. This is why silence is transformative. It does what confrontation cannot. It bypasses defense and speaks directly to, the nervous system. It invites reflection without force. And whether the avoidant chooses growth or deeper avoidance afterward is no longer within your control. But one thing is certain: silence ensures that truth is felt, not argued. And once truth is felt, it cannot be forgotten. Your absence becomes a mirror they can no longer turn away from. When you are present, your energy fills the space. Your consistency softens their awareness. Your effort makes the emotional environment feel stable, even if they are not contributing equally. In that dynamic, they rarely have to look at themselves. Your presence absorbs the imbalance, but when you step away, the reflection appears. And mirrors do not negotiate with comfort. Absence creates contrast. It highlights what was once taken for granted. The emotional safety you provided, the understanding you offered, the steadiness you held, all of it becomes visible only when it is gone. Not immediately, but inevitably. At first, they may feel ardent, lighter, less responsible. But that lightness fades when the mirror sharpens. Without you there, they are forced to sit with their own patterns. Their emotional distance has nothing to bounce off of anymore. There is no one to chase, no one to pull back from, no one to regulate against. The push-pull dynamic collapses. And in that collapse, self-awareness begins. Absence reflects emotional habits. The way they avoided difficult conversations. The way they withdrew instead of repairing. The way they relied on your patience without offering consistency. When you are gone, these patterns echo back at them through silence, through memories, through the emotional vacuum left behind. The mirror shows not who you were, but who they were with you. This reflection is uncomfortable because it exposes responsibility, not blame, but ownership. Absence removes the story that the relationship failed because it was too much, too intense, too demanding. In the mirror of your absence, they badge. And to see that what felt overwhelming was actually vulnerability asking for space to exist. Your absence also reflects their capacity for intimacy. They notice what they could not receive, not because it wasn't offered, but because they were not open. This realization often arrives quietly, not as regret, but as a subtle ache, a sense of something missed, something mishandled. something left unfinished. Memory sharpens the mirror. Moments resurface with new meaning. Things you said that were ignored, emotions you expressed that were minimized, efforts that were underestimated. Absence removes the defensive filter that once dismissed these moments. They are replayed now without commentary, without justification, just observation. This is where growth becomes possible, or avoidance deepens. The mirror does not decide the outcome, it simply reveals truth. Some will turn away again, seeking new distractions to avoid the reflection. Others will sit with it, allowing the discomfort to teach too. Hem something essential about themselves. Your role in this process is not to manage the mirror, it is to trust it. Absence is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of clarity. It returns emotional responsibility to where it belongs. You no longer carry the weight of their self-awareness. And here is the most important truth. The mirror works regardless of the outcome. Whether they change or not, you gain clarity. Your absence shows you who respects your presence, who values your energy, who notices when you are no longer there to make things easier. Absence does not make you invisible. It makes you undeniable, because what mattered leaves an imprint. And when that imprint is no longer actively given, its absence becomes the loudest reflection of all. Detachment is not punishment, it is alignment with self-respect. And this truth changes everything once it is fully understood. Many people detach believing they are being cold, distant, or unkind. In reality, detachment is not about teaching someone a lesson. It is about ending self-betrayal. Punishment seeks to control another's behavior. Alignment seeks to honor your own values. When you detach from someone who avoids intimacy, you are not withdrawing love to create pain. You are withdrawing access to protect your peace. Punishment is reactive. Detachment is intentional. Punishment is driven by anger or resentment. Detachment is driven by clarity. When you punish, you stay emotionally entangled, monitoring whether the other person feels the loss. When you detach, you release the outcome. You stop waiting for realization, remorse, or return. This shift is subtle but powerful. The energy changes from, see what you did to me, to, I will not abandon myself to be chosen. Self-respect begins when your actions match your worth. If someone consistently avoids emotional presence, communication, or accountability, staying engaged while hoping they will change quietly erodes your self-trust. Detachment restores that trust. It tells your nervous system, I will not stay where I am unseen. This is not harsh. It is honest. Many confuse detachment with indifference. They are not the same. Indifference is numbness. Detachment is clarity with compassion. You can care deeply and still step back. You can love someone and refuse to chase them. Detachment does not erase love, it simply removes self-sacrifice from the equation. And love without self-sacrifice is not abandonment, it is maturity. Alignment with self-respect also changes how you see the other person. You stop viewing them as a puzzle to solve or a wound to heal. You see them as they are, without fantasy. Detachment removes projection. It allows reality to stand on its own. And reality is always kinder than illusion, even when it hurts. This alignment also disrupts unhealthy dynamics. Avoidant patterns often rely on inconsistency being tolerated. When you detach, you no longer reward distance with pursuit. You no longer translate silence into understanding or neglect into patience. You simply step into your lane, and that alone recalibrates the dynamic. Detachment frees you from emotional bargaining. You stop explaining your needs repeatedly. You stop hoping your pain will finally be understood. You stop proving your value through endurance. Self-respect does not require an audience. It requires integrity. Detachment is integrity in action. There is also a spiritual dimension to this. Alignment with self-respect honors divine order. You were not created to beg for emotional safety. You were not designed to convince someone to meet you halfway. Detachment is trust that what is meant to meet you will do so without you shrinking or chasing. When detachment is chosen from self-respect, something remarkable happens. Your energy stabilizes, your emotions settle, you begin to feel grounded instead of reactive. And whether the other person feels the loss or not becomes secondary. The primary relationship shifts back to the one with yourself. LF. This is why detachment is so powerful. It is not an act against another. It is an act for yourself. And once you experience that alignment, you no longer detach to be understood. You detach because you finally understand yourself. Healing happens when you stop chasing and start trusting divine timing, because chasing is rooted in fear while trust is rooted in alignment. Chasing is the nervous system in survival mode, trying to secure connection at any cost. Trust is the soul at rest, knowing that what is meant to stay will not require pursuit. When you chase, you override intuition. When you trust, you return to it. Chasing feels active, but it is actually a response to anxiety. It is driven by the belief that if you do not act now, you will lose something essential. This belief creates urgency, and urgency clouds wisdom. You begin to negotiate your needs, explain your pain repeatedly, and tolerate emotional distance longer than you should. None of this heals you, it keeps you stuck. K in anticipation rather than presence. Divine timing operates beyond desperation. It unfolds when you release control and allow life to respond to your alignment rather than your fear. Trusting timing does not mean passivity, it means discernment. You still show up honestly, but you stop forcing outcomes. You stop chasing clarity from those who are unwilling to provide it. You allow silence to do its refining work. Healing begins the moment you stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself. This is not ego, it is spiritual maturity. Divine timing does not rush what needs to ripen. Some lessons cannot be learned while you are still clinging. Release creates space, and space is where transformation happens. When you trust timing, you also stop interrupting lessons meant for others. Chasing someone who avoids intimacy shields them from growth. Your availability delays their self-awareness. By stepping back, you allow truth to meet them where they are. That is not abandonment. That is respect for the process. Trusting divine timing also realigns you with peace. You stop scanning for signs, waiting for messages, or measuring your worth by someone else's responsiveness. Your nervous system begins to settle. You become present again. Healing is not loud, it is quiet. It happens in the moments you stop rehearsing the past or controlling the future. There is humility in trusting timing. It acknowledges that you cannot heal someone into readiness. You cannot love someone into capacity. Readiness is an internal decision. Timing honors that decision without pressure. When the moment is right, clarity arrives effortlessly. No convincing required. Divine timing is not about delay for the sake of suffering. It is about preparation. It prepares you to receive connection without fear. It prepares others to meet you without avoidance. And sometimes it prepares you to walk away with peace instead of pain. When you stop chasing, your energy changes. You no longer operate from lack. You operate from sufficiency, and sufficiency is magnetic. What aligns with you will move toward you naturally. What does not will fall away without resistance. This is the paradox of healing. Letting go brings you closer to truth. Trusting timing brings you into alignment. And alignment, not pursuit, is where healing finally takes root. As we close, remember this truth. You were never meant to chase what is aligned to meet you freely. What stepped away was not taken from you, it was returned to its proper place so you could return to yourself. Trust the process, honor your healing, and let time complete the work you no longer need to carry. Thank you for allowing these words to sit with your spirit. Walk forward in peace, in self-respect, and in divine alignment. Goodbye, and may clarity, strength, and wholeness meet you exactly where you are.